For a text example of how this works, let's look at how the riot squad covered a racial justice protest in Philadelphia last October, a week before the election. The protests erupted in West Philadelphia after
born and raised. Sorry.
That's fine. That's good. That's good. This was the I think this was the culprit that really triggered YouTube, even though you don't actually.
Oh, I remember this though. Yeah.
It's the there was a situation where a family calls the police because there's a guy who's like their son or something has a knife and he's like threatening to stab the rest of the family. And he's like attacking his parents, and the police come and the guy has the knife and he's walking towards them, and for like a good 10 or 20 seconds the cops are backing away, like put the knife down, put the knife down, put the knife down, and he starts to move towards them and he doesn't put the knife down and they shoot him. So it's like, I don't know what you want the cops to do in this situation.
They're supposed to leave them alone. Leave them to stab the family.
Well, it's so crazy because they're like, oh, well, the cops, you know, when they're dealing with someone who's crazy, they're saying that the kid had bipolar disorder, which I've met people with bipolar disorder. They need a
social worker.
I don't think that means that you stab people, but whatever.
No, I have bipolar disorder, so I don't stab people.
You don't, Aiden?
I know, it's weird.
No, you used to. You used to back in the day. Yeah.
You know, in West Philadelphia, born and raised, when I used to get into knife fights, you know.
Exactly.
But
yeah, but it's like I hate it. It's so gross because these people that complain about this, they say, oh, why didn't the cops de-escalate the situation? Why didn't they figure out the magic code word that you can tell a crazy person to get them to not be crazy? It's like, what are you supposed to do in this situation when the crazy person has a knife? Like, I don't.
Well, they want to send in a social worker or a counselor. What is that person going to do? When tensions are this high, there is nothing a social worker or a counselor can do besides get killed themselves,
right? Potentially.
So, I mean, yes, social workers and counselors can help when people are having serious issues, but not when stuff's this tense. You need to have some sort of force in place because someone's going to kill the other person.
I'm down.
A bystander filmed the fatal police shooting of Walter Wallace Jr., a black man whose family said he was experiencing a mental health crisis. That night, after the police clashed with protesters in the neighborhood, there was some vandalism and looting, which Wallace's family forcefully condemned.
And I don't condone no violence, tearing up the city, looting up the stores.
The next night, Julio Rosas, Jorge Ventura, Shelby Talcott, Richie McGinnis, and Elijah Schaefer were all on hand as protesters rallied peacefully at a park in West Philadelphia and then marched to a police station. They filmed a tense face-off between protesters and a line of officers outside the station. But since there was no violence, only one of their clips got any traction on social media. Video of a woman screaming at the police.
Fuck you! Every black person out here, fuck all y'all!
Later that night, there were...
That's the lady, I think that was her. She started calling them the C word for
really?
being black police officers.
That sucks.
Okay.
Minor skirmishes in West Philadelphia, but by then the riot squad had left the protest and driven across the city to cover a more telegenic scene, the mass looting of a shopping center 10 miles away. As Talcott and Rosas filmed inside a ransacked Five Below discount store, looters could be heard telling Schaefer to stop recording them and then seen punching him in the mouth. That video of Schaefer being assaulted was viewed over 1 million times, as was a clip in which he wrongly identified his assailants as Black Lives Matter protesters.
What happened? Well, how do you know?
Five Below?
Yeah, right.
How do you know they weren't?
Well, first of all,
it's the Schrodinger's BLM. That's all it is.
What happened, guys? Can't hear nothing.
What? You can't hear anything?
Lost my audio for a second.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
It's Adam's fault.
Continue.
But no, it's like the way he's categorized this. He's like, oh, they couldn't find any violence at the protest, so they had to drive so far away to this giant shopping mall that was being looted because of the protest. And it's like, okay,
10 miles away, 10 miles.
And I looked into this. There was like so much looting that went on during this time period. It was like insane. There's all these large shopping centers that were like broken into and looted. Like there's tons of property damage. And just because, and I'm glad that there were protesters somewhere else in the city that just protested and didn't riot or loot. I'm glad that happened. But that doesn't take away from all the people that are actually looting and stealing shit and rioting and burning stuff down. It doesn't take away from any of these things.
Yeah.
And to me, you know, at the end of this video, he shows a bunch of clips of these riot people getting, of the journalists getting punched and attacked, and it really comes off like he's advocating for it, because it's like, oh, let me show you the names and faces of all these people that are filming the Antifa people, and here's a bunch of clips of them getting punched. Like it just really comes off like he's advocating for it to me.
He's justifying the looting with the claim that it's justified because of racial injustice. Like he's the one making the connection between the looters and the Black Lives Matter.
Right.
I mean, isn't Black Lives Matter about racial injustice? Isn't the looting about racial injustice?
Right.
I mean, that's his argument.
But also, is it okay for Andy No to get the shit beat out of him for this same kind of stuff, for just reporting on what they're doing?
Right.
You know what I mean? It seems just a little bit hypocritical.
Yeah. I mean, and look, if you want to criticize Schaefer for calling these random people Black Lives Matter protesters when he doesn't know that either, it's like, okay, that's fine. But that's, you know, you can do that without this insane video. Mark.
Yeah.
Robert Mackey, whatever his name is, Dick Mackey.
He wouldn't get any clicks. He's playing the same game as these guys are playing.
Right.
He's like, I got to use all their insane footage.
Yes. I also just think that someone like this, and I'm not speaking about him specifically. I don't know this guy. I don't know his history. But I think a lot of people on this kind of side would have no qualms about calling someone a white supremacist or a Nazi without having any other evidence.
Totally.
So,
of course.
Please
he called them vigilantes joining the militia. Of course he did.
So I'm saying, please be ideologically consistent. If you're going to be upset about people assigning labels, then do not assign labels to other people.
Right, exactly. But this guy's swimming in hypocrisy, of course. This guy, I didn't realize he not just works for The Intercept. He's a senior writer.
Oh, wowee.
Yeah.
There you go.
Said that at the beginning.
Yes.
To just see what was going on with some of the looting, and I was jumped by the Black Lives Matter protesters who immediately started punching and kicking me.
In fact, as Talcott later acknowledged in an interview with Tucker Carlson, the videographers had to drive 30 minutes away from the protest by Walter Wallace's neighbors in West Philadelphia to film at the retail center in another part of the city where there were no protesters, only looters taking advantage of the overwhelmed police force.
So this is okay? Is that the narrative? Then this is okay for them to be looting because they knew the police were overwhelmed with the protests?
Well, I think he's trying to say like, oh, you know, they're not associated with the protests whatsoever.
Yeah,
these are
not
the protests are all good people. These are just those other people that are doing all the bad things.
Yeah.
But this inherently puts a bad light on the protests. Why do so many police have to show up to the protests if they are not potentially violent, therefore allowing the police to be distracted and causing this to be a potentiality?
Why are these people looting?
Right.
Yeah, why?
Well, and I would even go further. And I said this during all these protests, saying, look, you know, if you protest the first night because you think there's some unjust shooting, and you see that either the people you're protesting with or other people take advantage of you protesting to riot and loot, and you go out a second night to protest, you're culpable. Because you know that that's the response that's going to happen, even if you don't want that to happen, even if you don't like that that's happening.
Then you should alert the police if you know there's a new protest happening.
Or you should just not do it. You should just not do it. If you know that your actions are going to lead to some negative outcome, why are you doing it?
I don't know.
In this specific instance, like it's even dumber because with this specific instance, you have a crazy person who the police get called on them by his own family who has a knife who won't put it down, who's threatening them, and then gets shot. It's not even like this is not a George Floyd situation. There's no gray area here.
Yes,
you have a crazy person with a knife.
Yeah. I would say with these kind of protests, the only thing you could do to be Martin Luther King-like, by the way, would to want your protest to not be violent and looting and destruction of property. So if you are I know this is going to be controversial, but if you truly care about whatever the issue is, then you probably should call the cops. You should call journalists and have them show up and record this stuff so that you can show that your group who is protesting for whatever the issue is not violent, is not looting, is not destroying things.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
That would be the way I would perceive it. I don't
Yeah,
know.
Definitely. Definitely.
I need someone in charge, someone with the capability of renting U-Haul trucks to organize everything. Then they can keep track of what's going on. A secret
Right, if only.
person.
If only
Yeah.
there was someone buying U-Haul trucks.
But the viral video of the attack on Schaefer struck a nerve with conservative viewers and helped him
I wonder why. He's got a tooth knocked out. He's walking around a parking lot bleeding from the mouth. Yeah. I wonder why it struck a chord with people. What is this guy? I mean, oh my.
make the looting in one part of the city, not the peaceful protest in another. The focus
Oh my
of days
gosh.
of misleading.
I know. No wonder
We're
this
just-
guy's like an unsuccessful journalist.
We're just not supposed to care about the fact that these two events completely coincided with one another.
Yeah, it's crazy.
This is a coincidence.
Yeah, totally a
politicized
coincidence.
coverage on Fox.
The police there were ordered to stand down as more than 1,000 BLM activists, Joe Biden voters, and anarchists looted and destroyed businesses.
While their work is mainly used to under.
That's
Okay,
that's
hang
the
on,
quote.
Tucker.
That's
Hang
the
on,
quote I was
Tucker.
saying is pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, that's
bunch
totally
of Joe Biden
unethical.
voters are out there looting.
That's
All right.
totally unethical right there.
Tucker can get fucked for saying that.
Yeah,
but
Tucker's
whatever.
adding fuel to the fire.
But this also,
Joe
I mean,
Biden
this is a
voters.
classic example.
Sitch, were you out there? Be honest.
I was.
Tell
I was
the
out
truth.
There. I was looting. Yep. I wore a Joe Biden mask and I started just robbing. No, but
Was a shadow person. You were just probably showing up in the liberating
That's right. That's exactly it.
property. Unseen.
Look, people of shadow are the most oppressed people. We're constantly getting walked all over by you light bodies, as I like to call them.
Mm-hmm.
But no, like the weird thing too about this is, you know, if he was gonna, I'm sure he could make a video complaining and finding clips of people like Tucker or Sean Hannity or Ingram or whoever making all sorts of claims that he could say are lies or whatever, and it would be like, oh, he's punching within his weight class or he's punching up, and this just seems so bad. Like, I'm finding these independent journalists who are going out there, you know, doing on the ground footage, and I'm just punching them in the face while I'm sitting at my, you know, apartment somewhere, sipping tea, reporting on, you know, things. It's just,
Well, of course, that's
Yeah.
the easy way to do things.
I guess.
You don't have to get actually involved. And when you don't have skin in the game, right,
right.
it doesn't matter so much what you say or do when you're externalized. In terms of the anonymity kind of research, which this is very much involved in, I would say, it's what's called the cockpit effect.
Mm-hmm.
You can just throw bombs at people when you're not involved directly with them because they're
Yeah.
anonymous to you.
Sure.
So you can drop these bombs as much as you want. And the cockpit effect, which was studied by anonymity researchers, was predominantly because of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The people who dropped those bombs, when they studied them, their psychology after the fact, during the fact, they said they didn't feel anything. And afterwards, of course, when they saw the images of the destruction that were caused by the nuclear bombs, they felt terrible. But I don't know if these people really...
No,
I don't
because
know
they
if they really
demonize
get
the
an idea.
opposition to the point. Like, these people are terrible people in their eyes. So.
How crazy is that, though? That people who dropped bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, who thought that the Japanese were evil and were trying to, because they attacked America first, still felt that empathy, and yet someone like this cannot. That's some kind of psychopathy that I am in no way capable of comprehending, I think.
Yeah.
Something's going on there that's outside of my normal ability to rationalize.
Definitely.